Cool. So Andrew with Minnesota Beer Actress hanging out with Jace Marti from Schell's Brewing. We're hanging out at the Community Hops Hop Garden. We're lucky enough to have Jace stop by while we were doing our harvest, and he's got some exciting news to share with us. So what's going on, Jace?
Yeah, we are just signed the lease, or purchased some land on the north side of New Ulm. It was an abandoned farm site that was actually owned by a cooper from the Schell Brewing Company back at the turn of the century. So it's kind of a cool little historical tile. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to build a new building, and we're pulling 8 more cypress wood lagering tanks that we've had in storage for 20-some years now, and we're going to be expanding the Noble Star collection.
Wow! So you're gonna take the Noble Star series and expand it to kind of its own entity? Is that how it's going to work out?
Yeah, kind of what we want to do is we're going to move all 10 tanks into a room that we can move all of our sour beer production off-site, just to keep everything separate. But we really want to showcase those tanks. The tanks are just beautiful, and it's we want to have them have people be able to come see them firsthand, and also have a tap room in that place where you can enjoy the Noble Star beers and just sit around the tanks. And I think it's going to be a cool experience when it's all up and done.
Yeah. So what's the output on with just those 2 tanks now? What are you doing a year?
It all depends on the beers and the style that we're making. So far, everything is at minimum 6 months, and then they'll get up to over a year, year and a half. It's about the longest we've gone so far with the Black Forest Cherry. But what I eventually want to do is get into some really long, like 2+ year that we can blend with different beers. So that output will all kind of depend on how the beers evolve and when they're ready.
Awesome. So each one of those is what, 140 barrels?
Yep. Yeah, they were old lagering tanks, so we could do 2 batches out of our copper kettle, and they would age in the cypress tanks.
And that's pretty unique for wood, right? I mean, is anybody else using cypress at all?
As far as I know, there aren't any cypress lager tanks or beer tanks left in the world. I know some distilleries still use them because cypress is very dense, and it's also extremely resistant to decay, and it was grown in the south, so it was readily available up there, and that's why they used them for beer as well, because it was very neutral and extremely durable.
How do you think that impacts the flavor of the Star, the series that you guys are putting out? Do you think that makes a big difference?
I think the wood contribution is pretty minimal. I don't get a whole lot. I mean, it's definitely, when they're freshly cleaned, there's a definite wood aroma to it, but it's not like oak. It's very, I would say it's a more of a neutral flavor contribution. The big part is you get that oxygen, the ingress. They're thick staves, or 4-inch staves, so it's a lot slower oxygen uptake by the beer than you would get in like a wine barrel or a bourbon barrel, which are a lot thinner staves. So I think you get ultimately a different Brett character than you would out of a smaller vessel, just because it's a minimal oxygen, but it's still, you still get something.
And I know when we were down there, you kind of gave us a look around the cellar and showed us the tanks, and you explained some of the hard work that went into reconditioning those cypress tanks. Do you have that much work ahead of you to get those other 8 tanks back up and operational?
Yeah, I had some of our friends from Black Swan Cooperage come down there in northern Minnesota and had them look at them, and they said they're in great shape. And I agree. I think those are in better shape than actually the first 2 that we started with. So I think from that point, even that second tank where some of the staves were extremely warped, and I mean, you could almost stick your fingers in between the gaps of some of the staves. You don't have that with those other ones. They're very tight. I mean, even the rings have hardly even dropped down because they've stayed swelled so much. But we'll still have to get them out of the shed, get them moved to the new location once they're done. You still have to rehydrate them and everything, and the big part is removing that pitch lining. I mean, there's 60 years worth of wax lining in there that they would scrape, but it definitely built up over time. So getting that removed, we got to refinish all the doors and the manways, replace the valves on the bottom. They're old brass valves that I would rather have stainless ones. So those are the big things, and it'll take a while, but it's definitely a fun project we're looking forward to.
So ballpark timeline, what do you think, a couple years?
Hopefully not that long. They're going to start pouring the concrete in October, and it's as soon as there's walls and a roof up, the tanks are going to go in, so we can just start the swelling process. So the second time around, we've really shortened it. How fast we could swell them. We just learned a lot of things, and so I'm hoping that by next year we'll have beer in them, but then also have them in place and in the room, so we could potentially open up that tap room already next summer, I would hope.
So there'll be a tap room at the location.
Yeah. One of the cool things too is my dad never threw anything away, and we've got all these really cool old brass copper valves and old brewery parts that I want to kind of incorporate in that building that would, you know, kind of a walk back in time to see how things were done 100 years ago. Just with the old stuff we have, we've got so many old barrel heads, wooden barrel heads, rings, tools and stuff like that I want to kind of display on there too.
That's really cool. So do you guys know what you're gonna name the tap room? You have it all branded out and everything?
Yeah,
already?
I want to call it the Star Keller.
Star Keller?
Keller being German for cellar, and
Sure.
then the Noble Star collection. That was kind of what.
That's great.
Cool
One more
name.
reason for people to come down to New Ulm and visit the brewery and go see the Star Keller.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. Congratulations on the expansion, and can't wait to try some of it.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jace.
Thanks.
See ya.